Welcome to Pick Me Up, I'm Scared, the podcast.
I'm your host, Madeline.
I'm your co-host, David.
And today I lost the connector for our microphone to go to my computer. So we're just recording straight on the MacBook.
Which it means I'm going to sound extra nasally. Hope you guys enjoy that.
You know, just when you thought our sound quality couldn't get more inconsistent and bizarre.
It is better than when we try to record on Zoom. I will say that.
It definitely is, yes. And if you stick with us, you're a real one. I think the info's good, though. The info's worth it.
I will say, okay, well, I was on my way over here. I was like, well, how do we do the hard transition?
Uh-huh.
Let's do the most obnoxious of white American questions.
What is it?
Madeline.
Yeah.
How Irish are you?
Oh, I think I'm zero Irish. Wait, I have my 23andMe test. Do you know how Irish you are?
I mean, I know my family tree well enough to know I'm like all like English and Welsh.
Here we go. I have mine. I am 32% British and Irish.
Mm-hmm.
But I am mostly French and German. And
yeah.
I am 99.9% European. There's nothing else in there. Pure like mayo and egg.
If I had my druthers, I would emotionally blackmail you into dropping in 10 seconds of a Dropkick Murphys song. Or flogging Molly. I'm
Yeah. Well, so I guess I actually kind of have... I think first of all, it's problematic that they lump in the British and the Irish here. 23andMe is about to get canceled for that one.
You know, I was reading this is a weird, I don't even know how this happened, but I was reading an interview with the singer of Thin Lizzy, one of the...
Okay, great, all right, excellent, not weird at all.
You have made fun of me this is twice now that you've made fun of me for my love of Thin Lizzy.
Yeah, it's shocking every time I hear it.
They are so fucking good.
Okay.
They are resolutely, firmly Irish.
Uh-huh.
I
didn't know that, actually. That does make them seem more interesting to me.
Like, the singer in the interview is like the journalist is so you're like a British band, and he goes on like a fucking tirade about where he's like, we are not a British band, we are an Irish band, we sing about Irish things.
Got it.
You might
be selling me on Thin Lizzy, actually.
Also, the deep cuts.
Okay.
King's Vengeance, a great fucking song.
I'm open to it. I'm open to the Thin Lizzy lore.
Like some like dad rock.
I like some dad rock. I mean, Oingo Boingo, one of my favorite bands.
What if Bruce Springsteen didn't suck?
Oh, okay, because I hate Bruce Springsteen.
Yeah, no, but it's like, songs about like being like poor and kind of a rebel.
Okay.
And right, and set to like really sick guitar parts. They had two guitarists and it was cool.
All right. I'm open. Well, obviously today we're talking about Ireland. We're talking about the potato famine in particular, but you know,
realistically,
it's us. You got to get a lot of exposition to get to the potato famine.
Yeah, when we were talking about it yesterday, and I was like, we should probably do like a prehistory. And then when we did the outline today, I was like, so we're just doing the history of Irish colonization. That's what's happening. We're
basically
doing,
honestly, I will say the famine part of my share of the research was the shortest part.
Well,
because by the time you get to the famine, you're like, these poor people have been through enough. Free them. So yeah, this really it's a story of Irish colonization.
By the British. Those
famous colonizers, the same folks who brought you the United States, tried to bring you genocide in Ireland.
And when you proposed this yesterday, that tells you how large our research window is for these things.
Well, we stare at a computer for 12 hours and then brain dead at 8 p.m. We're like, all right, let's talk about what we've done.
It's a condensed research period.
It's a condensed but intense research period.
One of my main arguments was like, oh, remember when we read that Cedric Robinson book, Black Marxism? And Robinson, for those who haven't read him,
yes,
is on the more Hegelian side of Marxism. He tends to emphasize superstructure and ideology more than other Marxist thinkers as being a determinate factor in history. And one of the things he says in that is that the kinds of like racialized categories uh, that the British developed in order to justify and understand the material colonization of Ireland became useful in producing colonization and racism in the modern period.
Yeah, and this is what you'll see when you research this a lot. People will say that this was kind of the testing grounds for other forms of British colonization that would come afterwards.
Yeah, and like it's sometimes it can be really problematic, especially when the sorts of Americans who are like, I'm so Irish, I love potatoes or whatever, where it's like, well, you're American.
Yeah.
You're not Irish. That's like a different thing.
That is something actually people from other countries always make fun of Americans for, because Americans will like go to the country and be like, yeah, I'm French. And they're like, you're not fucking French, you're American. What are you talking about?
Yeah, it's I mean, we like, especially this is, I think, a specific way that middle class white people claim like a pass card out of their privilege.
Oh, it's like I mean, well, because for some people, like, okay, if you're Irish, like, yeah, this history that we're going to get into is horrific. And you're going to see that a lot of people had to immigrate to the Americas from Ireland so they did not die.
Oh, something on the order over 1 million people immigrated?
Yeah, were displaced. So it is really intense. But for me, where I'm just like, I'm French. It's like, I'm not French. I have no cultural ties to France. I do not speak French. I know nothing of France. So I get it. It is a way sometimes to give ourselves a more folksy and interesting background as white people. When you look at it, I'm like, all of my positioning is more within the class structure of the United States, where I've been my whole life, not with some mythical folklore element of long gone days in France.
Yeah, I mean, I like, if you look at the history of my family, it's very Daughters of the American Revolution.
Mine as well, on both sides.
Yeah, and which is not fun, and those people are annoying.
It's horrible. It's awful. But yeah, so today we are going to talk about the Irish potato famine, and it is a story about colonization, so we have to do a big backstory on that. Before we get into it, I just want to say, if you're not joining us over on Patreon, check us out there, patreon.com/pickmeupimscared. We are in the middle of doing our book club, which is Everyday Life in the North Korean Revolution, 1945 to 1950, with Susie Kim. There is other content on there as well that you might find interesting. If you don't want to do the book club, we have quite a backlog of episodes that you might enjoy. The other thing I want to say before we get into this episode is that we are approaching our winter break.
Though I think we're going to jailbreak some stuff just to keep content around.
Yeah, we might do some preview episodes if you haven't joined our Patreon and you don't want to put up the $2 or $3, a month without checking out the content. We'll probably preview some of those episodes for you over on our main while we take off holiday break. So this will be our last regular episode before holiday break.
But we're still doing book club, right?
We are still doing book club over on our Patreon. That's about all we'll be able to slide in there while doing holiday shenanigans. And for me, holiday shenanigans means a lot of work. It's the busiest work season of the year for me, so I really gotta focus on that because we don't talk to the family so much.
Well, in my case, my family's already drawing up battle lines.
Oh, they're getting ready. Yeah.
Right, like where I'm just getting phone calls already from like my sister and parents being like, can you believe what she said? I want you to be on my side on Christmas Day. And I'm like,
yeah, you're not making me regret my decision to distance myself from certain elements of my family. Though I do love my dad. It would be great to see my dad. Dad's a great guy. All right, so that's all kind of the general housekeeping stuff that we are getting into here. And so to start off, talking about how we're going to structure this episode, David and I have switched off different categories of research, but it will be a linear timeline that starts in the 1100s. So we're going to go through kind of in order, and that's what we're going to be talking about. And David, are you ready? Should we get into it?
All right. So first of all, let's, being like a Marx guy or whatever, I'm just going to start with Friedrich Engels, who called Ireland England's oldest colony. The first English colonists arrived in Ireland in 1169. And this story is like extraordinarily weird and convoluted, and there's a great podcast actually that I was listening to today called the Irish History Podcast that does like a 10-part series on this. I'm not.
So if you want the real deep dive, that's where you go. We're
That-
giving you the overview.
But essentially what happened is this. Rory O'Connor, who had suffered some like weird dynastic setbacks, eventually came to be crowned the High King of Ireland. And Ireland at the time was like, it's like a feudal place. So there were like a lot of little kingdoms, not like one giant kingdom, but he was the High King of Ireland after his father had been crowned High King of Ireland. Apparently at some point he tried to do an assassination attempt against his father, which is it's a whole own thing. But once he became king, he deposed one of the other regional kings, Dermot McMurrough, and this is the point at which I have to say, if you are Irish, please forgive me on my pronunciation.
You're allowed to punch us each in the face once if you see us in public for how we're pronouncing these names.
No, I'm sorry. That is a new Patreon tier.
The punch Madeline and David in the face once tier
Over
Patreon.
pronunciation.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
So Dermot McMurrough had either abducted or eloped with Devorgila, the wife of another regional king, Tiernan O'Rourke.
Okay, and what time period are we talking about?
So we're talking 1169.
Okay.
And McMurrough went over to London and met with Henry II, who agreed to raise an army to help McMurrough retake his throne. An English Norman army arrived in Ireland in May of 1169 under the direction of Richard de Clare, nicknamed Strongbow. By October of 1171, Henry II, with the sanction of the Catholic Church, landed with a further larger army, claiming to be Lord of Ireland. And I will say there are like some material factors that are worth considering, which is that prior to this, the Catholic Church, big in all of Europe, right, had been reorganizing the monasteries, which controlled large land holdings in Ireland and England. And some of the Irish monasteries were like a little less than forthright about sending money back to Rome.
Yeah, okay.
And
church on church crime.
It was just like, well, we're like a petty landlord basically,
Yes.
and we don't want to pay taxes to Rome. We'd like to keep this money here. And Henry II, meanwhile, 20 years prior to this, had killed the Archbishop of Canterbury, Thomas Becket, over a dispute with the church. So when Pope Adrian was like, you get to be Lord of Ireland if you go reconquer it and reorganize it, it was like a little bit of a way for him to like get back in good graces with the Catholic Church, and Adrian was an English pope, so it was like there's like a material history here is what I'm saying. It's not just like
let's go do a colonization.
Yeah.
It's like let's do a colonization to get back in with the Pope.
And it's not also just like the Dermot McMurrough like stealing some guy's wife thing.
Yeah, I forgot about the wife already, honestly.
Right. So at the same time, some of the like early justifications for English colonization start to come to the fore in a way that is going to be, I think, probably a large picture of our history.
Yes.
We get Giraldus Cambrensis, an early English-Welsh visitor to Ireland. And so he's among the first to offer a description of the Irish people, and among the first to land upon what would later become a pretty persistent trope of colonial rule, describing the Irish as barbarians. He said, quote, "They are so far removed in these distant parts from the ordinary world of men, as if they were another world altogether, and consequently cut off from law-abiding, well-behaved people." So, all right, we've got the English in Ireland. They've conquered shit. And Henry II is Lord of Ireland. But he's not king.
Correct.
Right. And so at this point, we jump forward to the 16th century, and I think this is where you take off.
Oh, yeah.
So we're 1534 with Thomas Fitzgerald.
Well, there's some other stuff I think is kind of relevant in
Okay.
here, too, that I think we should talk about. So, we are talking about King Henry II of England is the big guy we're talking about here. We're also talking about Richard Fitzgilbert a little bit.
Okay.
So, Richard Fitzgilbert was kind of the Earl of Pembroke. And you're going to hear a lot in this about people losing power and trying to reclaim power in weird political ways.
Yeah.
So, obviously, Henry II was the king throughout this whole kind of first expedition into Ireland that the British were talking about here around this time. So Henry was born in 1133. He died in 1189. So to hit this like in the 60s and 70s, this is really kind of what a lot of people talk about in terms of his career all has to do with Ireland. Before he became the king, he'd been the Duke of Normandy, he was the Duke of Aquitaine, and he became the King of England in 1154. So really, he'd only been king for like 15 years before he was like, yeah, we're conquering Ireland. So meanwhile, Richard Fitzgilbert, his dad had been the Earl of Pembroke, but most historians agree that Richard actually had a really bad relationship with Henry II. So Henry II, the king, was just like, I don't think you are the Earl now that your dad died. I think maybe you don't get this one. So just like Richard was trying to get back in the good graces with Henry II, Henry II was trying to get back in the good graces with the Pope. So we got a lot of people trying to impress each other, basically. So this guy, Richard Fitzgilbert, was able to retain this lesser title, which was Lord of Strigwil. But it was considered pretty embarrassing. Like, he'd basically been demoted. So he fell out of the king's good graces. He got pretty broke. And then finally redemption comes when he's selected to lead that Norman expedition right into Ireland in 1168 in honor of the deposed Irish king of Leinster, who had been kicked out of the position by the High King of Ireland. So he jumps at this chance because it's going to make him politically relevant again.
The High King of Leinster, that's the Dermot McMurrough guy.
That's the guy who stole the wife. So so this stuff all is relevant. So the King of Leinster, right? He had gone to King Henry II of England and he was like, hey, I got deposed. Why don't you help me get my shit back together over in Ireland? And in exchange, I will say that I am super loyal to you. And that is kind of the setup that I think is important for how the King of England becomes the Lord of Ireland. So in 1170, this has kind of been going on. Like you talked about, the Normans kind of go over there, check things out. And Richard himself is like, all right, it's 1170. We've had a year or so of some soldiers going in there conquering land. I'm going to personally go into Ireland and see what's up. So he goes in with some troops and he takes Waterford and Dublin both back in the name of the King of Leinster. And by extension now, because the King of Leinster pledged his allegiance to Henry II for Henry II. So I think that's like the important like channel of operations. So in 1170, Henry II, the King of England at the time, meets with Richard. And remember, he's like, I don't really fucking like Richard that much. And Richard's like, I know this guy doesn't like me that much. They meet at Newnham in Gloucestershire.
Gloucester?
Gloucester?
This is, okay.
Gloucester.
I will say this is an English thing that, like, I only...
Gloucestershire.
Sure.
Okay, anyway, sorry.
Okay, we know a guy who's from Northern England, who's from a place that my whole fucking life I pronounced Leicester. It's Leicester.
What?
This is, I don't know what the fuck is with England. I thought
that was Leicester.
Yeah.
Wow, okay, so Gloucestershire.
Sure.
Whatever the name is. They meet up. And Henry II is like, cool, good job, Richard. Why don't you turn over the rights to all these places you conquered? Dublin, the surrounding areas of county around it, these maritime towns, these castles that you took in this expedition. You seized them all for that deposed king, the King of Leinster, and he works for me now. He's my guy, so hand it all over to me. So they end up kind of divvying up this land, figuring it out, and everyone in Ireland at that point officially became a subject of King Henry II, in England.
I'm sorry, we're going with it.
Harry?
He's Harry.
He's this Harry king. So that is how, for the first time in kind of how we think of modern history, the Irish wake up one day and suddenly find themselves subjects of the King of England.
And it's all pretty, I mean, like, this is, like, pre-modern shit.
Yeah.
Right? Like, capitalism doesn't exist. Like,
Right, it's very feudal.
It's very feudal.
As David said, right. So the Pope is like, all right, you did it, kid. Right? And he's like, confirmed. I'm in Dublin. I'm showing up and I'm saying, that's right, Ireland. You all answer to that guy now. We're all Catholics, so you'll listen. And the Irish are just like, fuck. All right, I guess now we're subjects of King Henry II. So this resulted in this formal governance that went from 1171 to 1541. And the way it was thought of is this. The King of England is not the King of Ireland, but he is ipso facto the Lord of Ireland, which is what you were talking about.
Yeah.
So I think it's just kind of interesting to understand like the chain of command and how we got there, and also to really emphasize that like for Irish people, they just woke up one day and then someone like came to their town and was like, did you guys hear that we got to listen to the King of England now? And they're just like, wait, what?
I mean, I gotta point out, right, like, modern states didn't exist.
Yeah.
So
they're like, we all answer to this guy now.
Which, like, presumably doesn't have the same impact it has when you have, like, a modern state. Like, it's probably annoying.
You think it would be like, okay, like in our neighborhood, like if somebody came to Los Angeles and they're like, hey, Tom's handling everything in LA now. You think that sounds better than somebody showing up and being like, hey, Australia's handling everything here now.
I'm going to say Henry II sounds like Dove Charney circa 2010.
I could see that.
Right, where it's like, he's like the number of people I have met who've had sketchy interactions that have been exploitive and fucked up.
Yeah.
But he's not the king, like, right, like,
right.
It's like, he doesn't, like, control everything, but it's like...
Okay, so you would rather just some dude named Tom than, like, Australia took over. Because to me, the idea of a state being in charge, I'm like, well, they're used to running states.
But they
How
have,
fucked
like...
up can things get? I don't know Tom. I don't know what he can do.
But if, like,
What
Tom
if he
is just,
knows
like,
everything?
one guy,
Yeah,
and he's,
what
like,
if
far away,
What
and
if
he doesn't have a
wants
cell
everything?
phone.
Okay, that's true.
Right,
If it's hard
like-
to get in touch with him, how much is your day-to-day life really going to change?
Right, I'm, like, it's probably annoying because it's like, well, the Catholic Church, like, didn't really have shit on lockdown before this.
Yeah.
Right? Now they kind of got shit on lockdown.
No, we got kind of this, like, allegiance of, like,
Yeah.
King Henry II and the Pope are like, that's right, Ireland, this is what you're doing. So the key takeaway from this is that England, from this point on, kind of considers Irish people part of their land, but only kind of. And mostly struggles to quote-unquote control this new acquisition from the local people there, who sometimes are like, hey, fuck you, we don't like this. And also from warring neighbors who are like, that's a nice Ireland you got there. It would be a shame if something happened to
Yeah,
it.
I mean, especially in, like, the period of, like, Henry VIII, you get a lot of, like, we're freaked out about the French.
Yes.
Like, coming into Ireland, maybe Scotland might fuck with it, maybe Spain might fuck with it. Who fucking knows?
Who knows? So this starts this kind of trend where in England is kind of like, we're so happy we own this, we don't know what to do with it, though. It's like a new toy they don't know how to play with or have time to play with, except it's full of people, and the people are like, we would like not to die, please.
Yeah.
So, 1185, Henry II's son, Lord John, makes an expedition to Ireland, okay? And, you know, his dad, Henry II's getting a little older. He dies 4 years after this, honestly. So Lord John goes over to the island to check it out. Now, by this point, documents show that the lordship of Ireland has actually been transferred into John's hands. So John is now the Lord of Ireland instead of King Henry II. And King Henry II is still King of England. So now we have this kind of separation where it's like, well, now you're not actually the king's subjects, you're Lord John's subjects.
That feels like a demotion.
I mean,
right, like, as like,
you're not important enough to be the king's subjects. Now you got to listen to his idiot kid.
yeah, there's the real fail upwards kind of situation.
Failing upwards, right. So in 1209, Gerard of Wales writes this new edition of this book he's written, Expugnatio Hiberni, which is a book about the coming of the Normans to Ireland from 1166 to 1185. And he actually dedicates it to Lord John in what feels kind of passive-aggressive. He's like, hey, Lord John, make sure you don't forget about Ireland. He says the Irish kingdom was made subject to the English crown as if through a perpetual indenture and an indissoluble chain. That's the one.
Is that
That's the one. That's
listen,
the word.
I
it's
was
like
making
it's
fun
not
of you.
getting dissolved.
Yeah.
It's there. You're stuck with it. So again, Ireland, not actually a kingdom at this time. He calls it a kingdom, but he says the Irish kingdom, and all these historians are like, it's not actually a kingdom. Legally, in all the legal documents from this time, they just refer to it as the land of Ireland. But whatever. Gerard of Wales is a writer, and he's coming out and he's like, hey, Lord John, since you're in charge of this area now, do not forget about us.
So I got this guy under, I think, the name Giraldus Cambrensis. I think this is the same guy, honestly.
Yes.
And he doesn't have a lot of great things to say about the Irish, except in one weird passage where he's talking about how great their string music is. And he's like, I've never seen their hands move, or anyone's hands move that fast.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that, like, the whole other thing to note here is that a lot of the people in Ireland who we're going to hear start calling on England to, like, hey, don't forget about us. Hey, don't forget about us. They're not people who were born in Ireland. They're this group that's going to emerge that's like Anglo-Irish. They're like the first people that King Henry sent over to do England things there. And they do get relatively, as we go on in the story, more kind of attached and into Irish culture. They feel more Irish as time goes on than English, but these are the people really, so like, you know, Gerard of Wales, he's not Irish. He's an English guy living in Ireland.
What is usually called, like, the region that is, I think, in, like, south of Ireland, usually called the English, or the Irish Pale, right?
Oh, yes. Like, that's around Dublin. There starts to pop up this area around Dublin that's just stacked with English dudes.
Well, because it's right, like...
And that's the phrase beyond the pale, right?
Yeah.
Would be everything that happens outside of where the English are horrifying and scary, because the Irish, racism,
barbarians,
savages, barbarians.
Yada,
Yeah, and that's the phrase, I'm sure, beyond the pale, but I haven't looked that up, but that's the impression I got.
And I think by the end of the 18th century, you get 350,000 administrators who are the descendants of the first sort of, like, English colonists.
And they end up being their own kind of social class. So what's happening right now with the English sending just some people over into Ireland is we're establishing what's going to be a pretty large kind of caste going forward in the story.
Which, for anyone who has, like, a sort of, like, passing interest in settler colonialist projects and the development of nationalism, should ring some bells.
Yes, this is a pretty common technique. So, by 1244, the subjects of Ireland are at least kind of formally integrated into the British Empire. And we know this because in July of 1244, some of the leading Irishmen, like 20 of them, were summoned to join the king on an expedition against the Scots.
Okay.
So, at this point, England is like, okay, we've had you for like, almost like 100 years almost. Like, you're us, and we're going to conscript you into fighting our wars with us. And not just like randoms, like really prominent Irishmen were brought in to do politics, basically, in wartime with the King of England against the Scots. But we know...
Braveheart shit.
Braveheart shit, yeah. But we know at the same time that the Irish as a race, which they were considered a race, remember, race is socially constructed, they were excluded from common law still. So if they wanted to be protected by the English, by the kingdom, right, they had to purchase this thing called a charter of denizenship. So they basically had to buy their own citizenship, and they would buy it, and it would entitle them to participate in English law. So basically imagine... like, okay, think about how in the United States, your driver's license or your state-issued ID card is like, yes, here I am legally, blah, blah, blah. Imagine if you had to buy that for like a really, really large sum of money. And if you didn't have that, you got no laws that applied to you and you got no legal protection.
I mean...
You'd get in trouble for hurting other people. But if somebody broke into your house and stabbed you in the face and stole your money out of your wallet, nobody's going to help you because you're not a citizen.
I'm sorry, I have to imagine that there may be some people listening to this who can very well imagine that fact happening.
Yeah, exactly. So this is the same thing. Yeah. So, but this is your own land. So very obviously, you know, we got all these fucked up shit in the United States with people who immigrate here. Like, you know, you got to pay taxes, but you don't get representation. Like, we threw a bunch of tea into the harbor in Boston because we were like, no taxation without representation. Undocumented immigrants are getting taxed without representation. Social Security,
all the fucking
time. And they're not eligible for any of it, right? But imagine this is in your own home. These people show up in your home and they're like, oh, if you want to be a citizen in the place you were born, you got to pay us money. And not a little bit of money.
Like
an
a lot.
exorbitant amount of money. You got to be a rich Irish guy for the English to even start to care about you. So you're literally buying the right to be protected by the king, who claims ownership of the land you are on. And again, you just woke up one day and then someone was like, this is what's happening. It's pretty fucked up. So 1254, 10 years kind of after we have the situation where the leading Irishmen are summoned to go fight against the Scots with the British, which is just like a little aside, John's son Edward comes about. And he is the one who next is like assigned kind of the rights to the land of Ireland.
He's Lord.
No. Lordship, though, does not get included.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't know. All these guys hate their sons, I think. And this is an important distinction in the relationship because this means that now this new development happened. Remember, originally you were the King of England and you were the Lord of Ireland. And then, we get to John and now it's like, well, you're not the King of England, but you're just the Lord of Ireland. And then we get to John's son Edward and it's like, well, you're not even the Lord of Ireland. You just hold the land of Ireland, but you don't possess the lordship.
Wait. I'm sorry. Go back to John here for a second. So Henry dies. John is King of England.
I don't even think John is the one who became King of England. I think a different son became King of England. So John's son Edward is even less important.
Oh, this is crazy. You're getting like princes.
I mean, yeah. So, but this is important because this really establishes the legal precedent for how Ireland is supposed to relate to England. So, lordship had been kind of one and the same as the crown as an entity, right? It's like, okay, well, you're not the king, but you're like within the kingdom, blah, 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 blah. And at this point, now what they're saying is, no. You can't separate these anymore. You remember how John wasn't king, but he was the Lord? We're taking that away. We're going back now. We're going back to just the king is the Lord of Ireland. Fuck the situation that happened with John. Edward, you're kind of in charge of this, but you're not the king, so you're definitely not the Lord.
He's like an administrator?
He's like an administrator at this point.
Okay.
So by the 1270s, 16 years after this, Edward negotiates the purchase of a general grant of English law to the entirety of Gaelic Ireland. He tries to. He's negotiating. He's like, hey, what if we just do this where all of Gaelic Ireland has to just subject itself to English law now? So 1280, 10 years later, Edward is like, I don't want to subject the people of Ireland to English law just by conquering them. I want it to be something that's mutually beneficial. This deal, these negotiations, though, it's slow. It's been 10 years and it's still not worked out. And eventually, the whole deal falls apart. So what this means is that the Irish are left outside of English law, so to speak. They are not allowed to be administered now apart from the king. The king is the Lord once again. They tried to do something a little different. That didn't work out. So they just have this really weird, murky legality within the system of like England, of like statehood,
Well, right. And we are not even like the 12 modern states don't exist yet.
Right.
Right. And
so everyone's trying to figure out what to do with Ireland.
It's all kind of, if we were to try to cast it in terms of modern sovereignty, you might talk about a state of exception, but that doesn't seem quite right, granting.
Yeah.
Right.
To me, it kind of feels like what the United States does with Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, we're in control of you unless it means we have to do something to help you. Then we're not. And also, you don't get any rights in this system.
Yeah, but again, modern states don't exist yet.
Right. So what does this mean about the relationship going forward between Ireland and England? Well, as Lord of Ireland, the King of England is tasked with technically protecting the subjects there in Ireland. And the subjects are in turn tasked with pledging their loyalty to the King of England. So the king's subjects in Ireland then have this responsibility to protect the king's land there, all of Ireland, to defeat his enemies if they come and invade, and to support him in time of necessity, like, I don't know, if you're going to go to war with the Scottish, right? So the king, in turn, though, is bound to guard their rights above all else and protect them and their quote-unquote property. It's all technically the king's property, but whatever property they got going on there. So 1285, King Edward I of England issues this thing called the Statute of Winchester. Weirdly, this doesn't end up getting sent to Ireland until 1308, like 20 years later. But they issue it in England, and the Irish don't even know about it for a little bit, which is weird. And this thing cleared up some of the terms and procedures about how they were legally going to administer Ireland. And it ended up being in place until January 1st of 1970.
Jesus.
Yeah, this thing was in place for hundreds of years, although it did have 5 amendments in the interim. So when we say this stuff's really laying the foundation for, like, how England relates to Ireland, I mean, like, laying the foundation for, like, hundreds of years how this would go down. So basically it said, look, this is how we're going to handle things like robbery. This is when the night watch is going to begin and the town shuts down and nobody can be outside of their houses. That only happens in the biggest towns, right? This is how, like, their version of highways at this time are going to work. This is how we're going to get from markets to towns. And also rules about, like, what you can do in churchyards, because remember, the King of England's still buddy-buddy with the Pope and the Catholic Church. It's gonna die down soon, but still, they're like, well, you can't do, like, fairs and markets and churchyards, that's disrespectful, blah, blah, blah. So this is really the start of when we see the Kingdom of England administering laws in Ireland, even though that last deal fell through, where they were like, hey, we're just gonna work on this and see if you want to do English law. By this point, the Kingdom of England is like, no, you're doing some England laws. Not all of them, but at least these. So 1331 comes around, and an English Parliament session is like, all right, this is a mess. Everything is really weird. Maybe Ireland and England should just have exactly the same laws. But this didn't really work out that well. Like, the Irish people were like, okay, I know technically we're supposed to be protected by England, but in practice, we're not, unless we own these stupid charters of denizenship still. So we know for a fact that this doesn't actually get administered well, because the records that are kept of citizens buying these charters of denizenship, the Irish buying these, they stay the same. Like, people are still buying these things. So obviously they don't feel that this is actually working. So they still feel they have to buy the right to be considered a citizen in their own country. Now, 10 years after this point, a crisis emerges in England. The king is freaking out. He's like, oh, we got to purge elements from the government. Everyone's out to get me. Ah! And the purge extends into Wales and Ireland. So, December 10th, 1340, the king had created 16 special judicial commissions to receive indictments and try cases within 38 counties concerning officials accused of using their offices since Edward's accession to extort money from or oppress the people or defraud the crown. So he's in, like, peak paranoia mode, the King of England, and he's like, we gotta control the ranks here. We gotta try everyone. Everyone's out to fuck me over, including the people in Ireland. So as these kind of crackdowns start spreading throughout all of the Kingdom of England, including Ireland, strong anti-England sentiments start to grow throughout Ireland. So it's not like they were loving it before.
Yeah.
But now we've got, like, a movement of people being like, oh, fuck this. We are not into this. So anyone from England in Ireland at this time starts to just get, like, treated as a foreigner, an invader, more than they had been in the past.
In Ireland. Let's make that clear.
In Ireland, yeah. In 1357, the King of England ends up basically admitting that beyond lawmaking, the crown does have this obligation to protect and enforce laws in Ireland, even for people that didn't buy the charters of denizenship. But pretty early on, we have some evidence from people in Ireland that, yeah, it didn't change anything, and this relationship was not always going as planned. And we say people in Ireland, a lot of the records we have, again, are from English administrators sent to Ireland to, like, do things on behalf of the crown. So 1360, for example, there's a council meeting in Kilkenny, Ireland, which we'll talk about Kilkenny a lot later. And they sent messengers to the King of England, and they were like, hey, you have to step in and help us out here. The English tide leadership in Ireland, because things are not going so great. First of all, Black Death Plague. That's not good. We're not enjoying that. We know it's worse in England, but it's still happening here. It's not cool. We also have some of the king's people acting crazy out here. Like, what are they doing? They're just running around, stealing things and being weird and lawless. And what this council really needs is, quote, good and sufficient captain, stuffed and enforced by men and treasure. Which is quite, getting stuffed with men is quite a quote. Coming out of these guys. But that's the quote, and they're like, that's what you got to do to secure our safety over here as the king's dudes in Ireland.
So they're saying, send an occupying army that with, like, a shit ton of money and guns.
Yeah, give us a bunch of men and money.
Guns maybe not quite yet.
Just give us the dudes and the money.
Yeah.
Give us the men and the treasure to stuff us. And again, when they're talking about safety, who are they really talking about safety from? Well, first of all, the Black Death Plague. But, you know, what do your army's not going to kill the Black Death Plague.
You know, the thing that to this day makes me feel that like weird body horror thing is like the sores under the armpits.
Oh God, it does. I would prefer to never get the plague.
Yeah.
If I could make it through my life never getting the plague, that'd be pretty cool. Because, you know, every year a few people get the plague in the United States.
I'm sorry, what now?
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, every year there's like 2 or 3 people who end up with the plague somehow. We know how to treat it now, so it's not lethal. But it still is not sounding like a fun time.
That doesn't...
No, it's not great. You don't want the plague.
I'm sorry, You did a Jerry Seinfeld.
Oh, well, Jerry Seinfeld doesn't want the plague either, I bet.
No, that was... You don't want the... Like,
well, okay,
what's the deal with
still
the...
sore because of my postnasal drip. This happens every winter.
I just got a what's the deal with the bubonic plague?
What's the deal with the plague? Yeah, well, okay, so, you know, the guys obviously can't fight the plague. So who do they really want the guys out there to fight against? The Irish. The Irish people who are like, this England shit is not going well. So by the middle of the 1300s, normal people in Ireland are getting increasingly thought of as enemies of just like the King of England. Just like anybody who's like, fuck the king, they're like, fuck you. What's that? Fuck you. Fuck that.
So just to, you know, put a fine point on it, the indigenous people of a colonized place are increasingly being treated as the enemies of the settler colonialists.
Yes, and
okay,
they are
just,
viewed,
like...
as the problem here. The English people, they're like, we're trying to do colonization. We're here. Why are you guys being such dicks about this? And the people who are there who are like,
we brought a disease. Come on.
Yeah, they're like, get the fuck out of here. Why are you here? So at this time, the terms Hibernicus and Inimicus.
Enemy.
Yeah, these are considered synonymous. And Hibernicus is the term used to describe the Irish.
So...
And Inimicus is enemy. So they're just like, Irish and enemy are getting thrown around interchangeably in the English language at the time. So the king's Englishmen in Ireland are administering things, and they start referring to, like you talked about, David, the Irish with these terms. They're like, oh, they're wild, they're savage, they're uncivilized.
They're Scythians, which feels weird.
Yeah, they're just like, oh God, these Irish people are really bumming us up. And they were like, none of the Irish are listening to the laws, not because, I don't know, maybe they think the laws are illegitimate because they're from an occupying force. No, they're like, they're not listening to the laws because they're wild savages who can't be trusted.
Which is the narrative of every colonized people ever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, 1361, the king sends his new son, we got a new king, we got a new son, Lionel, into Ireland.
I'm sorry, Lionel?
Lionel. We got, the king of England in 1361 is like, I'm sending my kid over there. They always send their kids. They're always like, son, go check on that Ireland thing. And the son's always like, yes, Papa, I will go check on the Irish, you know?
I'm sorry, what?
I don't know what the accent is. What? I don't know.
What the fuck was that? Like,
okay,
that's how...
it wasn't an English accent, I guess. I don't know what they do in England, all right? I've never been.
That part is the least of... This is how you think sons and fathers talk to one another? Yes,
yeah.
Papa?
Yes, Papa. Yeah. That's not what you say to your dad?
My Feifel?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
so Lionel, I also said I'd never been to England. That's a lie. I've been to England. I don't know why I forgot I've been to England. Not that memorable, I guess. So the king sends his son Lionel into Ireland with this huge military just to check things out. And I'm sure the Irish love to see that. They're like, this fucking king sends his idiot son with all these soldiers. Great. So 1394 to 1395, King Richard II enters Ireland himself with the largest army to ever enter Ireland from England in the Middle Ages. And he's like, hey guys, I know we haven't been so great at dealing with you, but don't worry, I've got a new vision for Ireland. You're gonna love it. And the Irish are just there like, I bet we won't.
Putting it that way, it makes me think of the 9 Habits of Highly Effective People, like just like some boardroom shithead. Yeah. Like, that's the vibe I'm getting.
This is basically what happened. So King Richard II shows up and is like, what if instead of being the Irish and the English, hear me out, we're one group of people, English and Irish, as one instead of 2 separate groups. But I'm sure the Irish are like, well, unless you guys are going to be Irish, that means you want us to be English. That's
Which they're not.
like, what? That doesn't make sense. So he kind of tells everybody, I got this whole plan. And then a few years later, he comes back again. He's like, hey, I'm back to work on the plan. But the plan does not work. It doesn't go well. And he gets so wrapped up in trying to do this that he actually ends up losing the crown in the attempt.
Like the physical crown.
Like, no, not the physical crown. Like, he is no longer the king because he's so wrapped up in this shit and a bunch of shit goes down.
I'm going to persist in believing that he was just like shuffling around the throne room
and just
the
drops
palace,
it somewhere
and it's like he does the thing where you're like really involved in thinking about something and you set something down
and then you're just like, you never see it again. It becomes like white vision, not like white noise, but like whatever the visual version of that is.
I can't find my headphones for exactly this reason.
Right, they're somewhere.
Yeah,
but you can't see
them anymore. I lost
anymore.
my crown.
Yes, exactly. Well, this is what's up to King Richard. He gets so focused on this Ireland thing that he ends up getting conquered and taken over by some other faction in England. Boom, no longer king anymore. But new king, still the Lord of Ireland. So in 1436, this political poem comes out called The Libel of English Policy. And basically this poem gets kind of popular, and it says, look, England, you need Ireland. You need us. We have a good position in the sea. We protect you from foreign invasion, and we are full of gold and silver. And we know you like gold and silver.
Is that...
I don't know. This is what they say.
I don't
know. Maybe they're doing a hard sell. I don't know how much gold and silver they got there, but they say in the poem we're full of gold and silver.
That seems... Who wrote this? Is this an Irish guy wrote this?
Yeah. And he says, if you want to get all this sweet, sweet Ireland, you have to, at the very least, deliver on your promises and requirements as our king to make sure peace is happening over here and there's goodwill over here and you're not shirking your responsibilities to actually take care of Ireland.
So this is like the settler colonialist, like I'm assuming like bourgeois position of like, hey, look, we just want good administration with the homeland. Like, right, we want you guys to like treat us like citizens. We would like to understand that basic premise of sovereignty.
Right. They're like, look, if you're gonna come here and pillage all our shit and utilize our land, you gotta at the very least take care of like administering this stuff. Like make sure that we're not falling apart. This is the least you could do. And this poem gets really, really popular, which seems to suggest that around the time, people in Ireland were like, we are getting nothing out of this England thing. Fuck this England thing. So in 1460, Parliament meets in Dublin. This is the Irish Parliament. And they issue a statement saying, the land of Ireland is, and at all times has been, corporate of itself by the ancient laws and customs used in the same, freed of the burden of any special law of the realm of England, save only such laws as by the lords spiritual and temporal, and the commons of the said land had been in great council or parliament there held, admitted, accepted, affirmed, and proclaimed, according to sundry ancient statutes thereof made.
Okay, help me out here.
Okay, so basically they're just like, look, Ireland is its own thing. We don't need to be administered with special laws from England, but we also know technically we are a part of England. So they're like, remember that guy who showed up and was like, we're just gonna be one thing, kumbaya, and it didn't fucking work? Forget that. Let's just be two things. So then they issue two coins after that. One with the name Ireland engraved on it, and the other with the name Patrick engraved on it, which has some English significance. So they're like, look, we got two things going on here. And this kind of made me think about like how Cuba, like if you visit Cuba but you're not Cuban, you use a different currency than the locals do.
I did not know that.
Yeah, they have different currencies. So this is kind of what they do in Ireland. They're like, we got our special Irish currency. Oh, we got this other England thing you guys can use when you're here. So this was meant to really showcase and solidify that Ireland is separate from England but obedient to it.
So, right, Ireland as its own thing, but under the dominion of the British.
Yeah, kind of like states' rights.
I'm going to go ahead and say that's a theme.
That's a theme.
Right,
it's a
like,
colony. It's a colony.
That's but no, but like, right, like that's a, you know, when we get to 1922, home rule for Ireland under English terms becomes like kind of the thing. Right.
Yeah, so this is really, I mean, what you'll see is that hundreds of years, they got hundreds of years, England does, to figure this out. They never fucking figure it out.
Yeah.
They never fucking figure out what they're trying to do here. So the distinctions are murky. You can tell a lot of people are trying to make sense of it. It's just not landing right. So 1474, another message comes from Ireland reminding the king, like, hey, do you remember that you were bound to defend us from foreign invaders? Did you forget? And these messages in 1474 are coming from the English guys stationed in Ireland at the time. They're like, hey, king, hey, we can't do this without like a lot of armies from you guys in the mainland. We can't even do colonizing right. This is fucked. So meanwhile, it also seems like anybody who has beef with the King of England just starts viewing Ireland as the backdoor entrance to fuck with England. And all the Irish people are like, this does not make us feel safe. All of your enemies are coming here now.
So
and
we're
they're
getting
fucking with us.
the French.
The French, the Scottish.
Yeah.
Yeah. So multiple documents are referring to what people just call the war in Ireland, but it's like many wars happening. It's like the Irish people are trying to fight with the English, the Scottish and the French are trying to fight with the English, but in Ireland, the Irish are getting conscripted to go join England's wars with all these other countries. There's just war in Ireland.
This seems
Not
bullshit.
a war.
And right, like, I imagine at this point you might long for the days of, like, some guy stealing another guy's wife and
Yeah.
that being, like,
No.
like,
Now you're just like, everybody who's mad at England is here now.
yeah.
And now they're fucking with us. And now we're mad at England, and that's a whole additional conflict added into this. So the king is just sending massive amounts of armies and money from England to Ireland all the time from this point on. Just throwing money and soldiers at Ireland. Like, oh shit, this is getting messy. One historian, James Lydon, said that the funds that were spent in this pursuit in this time period of around 15 years would have been equal to the entire revenue of the Dublin government for over 40 years.
Damn.
Yeah. So when we say they're sending money, they're sending money.
But it's presumably not redounding to Irish people.
No, the Irish are
Right.
getting nothing out of this experience. This is just like your whole land's getting fucked with because England is pissing everybody off. So 1485, the House of Tudor holds the throne in England now. And they're going to be in charge in England until 1603. And this is where we really start to see a more focused interest in Ireland coming from England, which is not good.
Yeah,
It's not great.
Henry VIII was kind of like a butcher there. Like, it's
Oh,
not,
yeah. This is great. We're in Henry the Seventh, though, still,
Yeah.
I think. So, 1487, this rebellion happens called the Simnel Rebellion. And this guy, Lambert Simnel, who's like a con artist imposter, which is actually pretty interesting. And he's like, hey, you know what? I think I'm actually the king of England. I'm actually the son of the king, but like he died, and it's actually me. I'm the real king of England. Oopsie. And he goes to Dublin and gets crowned King Edward VI, king of both England and Ireland somehow. Remember, there was not a king before, it was a lord. Somehow in Dublin, he gets crowned both king of England and king of Ireland by this like random illegitimate group of people. It's aided by some Irish people, which is also more confusing. And King Henry VII is like, what the fuck? You're a con artist. We all know you're a con artist. And he kind of views Simnel as being like harmless. And his only punishment for this ends up having to be working in the king's kitchens. But King Henry VII is like, well, what do we do with all the Irish people who try to help this guy? Because they basically try to do treason and help him overthrow the King of England.
Which seems like if you're like, I have to imagine there were a lot of Irish people who were like, yeah, you're a con artist. However,
why not? Let's see what happens
let's
here.
go.
Yeah. So this gets this renewed interest in law and order from the English over in Ireland. So in the 1500s, people in England who are like social engineers, like government types, are like, we got to figure out what to do with Ireland that makes this really profitable for us, because all it's really given us is a mess and a lot of war. So they're like, what we need to do is intense colonial projects in a very structured way.
So this is land reform type shit.
Yeah, land reform in the negative. They're like,
Yeah.
we got to make some plantations over there. We got to plant people there and make them grow shit that they can send back to England that helps us out. So by this point, like the English government had pretty much accepted the idea that the Irish were ungovernable, uncivil, and evil. So the emphasis became on reforming the state of Ireland because Ireland was just thought of as being a huge problem. So by the beginning of the 1500s, only that small area surrounding Dublin, which we called the English Pale, was effectively totally under British control. Everything else was just kind of like a daily fight with the Irish because the Irish were like, we fucking hate you.
Yeah.
Justifiably. So as historian Samantha Watson put it, the day-to-day correspondence between the Dublin government and London is shot through with frustrated peace settlements, broken pledges, and the disabling costs of maintaining frontier garrisons. Broken alliances with native clans led to debilitating raids on the border of the English Pale. So all the English people who were in Ireland are like, this isn't working for us. And all the English people back in England are like, this isn't working for us. And all the Irish people in Ireland are like, this isn't working for us.
Yeah, and it leads to some, like, weird shit, like the Kildare Rebellion, which I think you're going to get to.
Yes, exactly. But by this point, I want to point out, they've had 400 years to figure this relationship out.
To be fair to those assholes, they weren't figuring their own shit out.
Nothing
at
is
all.
getting
Like,
figured
right,
out.
Again, we're still a little ways away from anything that could, like, we're about there, but the modern state.
Yeah, it's messy. So in 1536, Robert Cowley, who's this merchant who like rose to some prominence in Dublin, he writes to Thomas Cromwell and he's like, I've got this great idea. We've confiscated a bunch of land here, right? What if we confiscate more and we turn them into new settlements for the English and you just send a bunch of fucking English people out here and we really do settler colonialism in a major way? And the king is like, this is a great idea. That way I don't have to send armies out there. I can just send everyday English people out there and they're just going to take up land. And the next thing you know, Ireland is less and less Irish and it's more and more English. And these are people who are obedient to me and they'll just kind of hold it down. And this is really the key premise of settler colonialism every time it's enacted. It's very, very violent. If you have just like average families going to the land, they're not innocent. They're there for a reason. And it's an arm of violence. So like the average American families settling the West out here in the United States, they weren't chill fucking good people. They were doing violence.
So I should point out, by the way, that by the 1530s, we're at Henry VIII now.
Yes,
which
we are.
leads to Thomas Fitzgerald, 9th Earl of Kildare.
Yes.
Who was appointed governor of Ireland by his father when his father was called away to England. The principal, so upon hearing that his father had been upon falsely hearing that his father had been put in the Tower of London and killed, Fitzgerald starts a rebellion against Henry VIII and announces that he and with him Ireland would renounce their allegiance with Henry VIII. Henry couldn't just let that stand and sent an army into Ireland to put down the rebellion. Richard Stanishurst, writing 40 years after the events of the Kildare Rebellion, seems to have laid the blame for the intriguing that led to Fitzgerald's break with Henry VIII on the heads of anti-aristocratic Anglo-Irish lords who'd come to prominence during the administration of Thomas Cromwell. And the thing is like historians kind of disagree about Thomas Cromwell because most of them are like he let the settler colonialist project kind of go without administering it too much. It seems more likely that it was actually just like Anglo-Irish resentment of English interference.
Yes. And this is what we mean when we talk about how the first kind of people who England sent out to Ireland, as time goes on, we're going to see that they identify more and more and more with the Irish than the English. And it creates some interesting class dynamics. So when we're talking about Thomas Cromwell and the confiscated lands and the increased settler colonialism, he loved this idea. And the general thought process they developed was that the more people we have densely settled in an area, the more successful these are going to be. So we just need to pick an area, pack it full of English people. Which sounds like a nightmare. So land was given to basically soldiers and Englishmen who were considered trustworthy by the crown. Mm-hmm. And they'd be like, hey, here's your duty now. Go settle Ireland for us.
We should also mention one of the things that happened. The Lord of Ireland thing got taken away from Henry because of his split with the Catholic Church.
Yes, so 1541, King Henry VIII no longer gets to be the Lord of Ireland. But he does get to be the King of Ireland.
Because he's just like, fuck it.
He's just like, fuck it, I'm your king now then. So that means all the Irish people are more directly named his subjects. He's like, I'm one king, I got two separate kingdoms. The church is mad at him. The Catholic Church is like, you don't get to be the Lord of Ireland. And he's like, I don't fucking care because I'm the King of Ireland. How about that?
And it's worth pointing out that in Ireland, there are a lot of Catholic people.
There's a lot of Catholic people in Ireland.
Right.
So, Sir Thomas Cusack speaks of this to an English council at the time and says, wherefore, before they were taken as Irish enemies, they are now accepted as subjects, and in this way, by good wisdom, they will continue in peace and obedience. He's like, this is going to be great, because now the Irish are officially going to be subjects of the king. Not like all those 400 years and they were only kind of subjects of the king. And they're going to listen to us. They're going to be so obedient. English leaders in Ireland, though, were like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, this is not going to happen. And they don't, the reason for this they land on is not, this won't happen because the Irish are mad we're here and we're not supposed to be here. What they land on is, this will never happen because true subjects are way more civilized than the Irish are.
So, right, the narrative about the Irish, it's become, like, pretty fucked by this point. And also, like, pretty, like, it's written in stone by this point.
It's
and, like, the colonial imagination. Yeah,
they're just like, the Irish are bad, uncivilized, evil people, and we have to civilize them. And you're not going to get a true subject out of the Irish. You just have to crush them and make them obedient. So, 1542 to 1593, this is when we really see what people refer to as the Tudor conquest of Ireland. Remember, the Tudors were in control of the kingship, the kingdom of England at this time. We got King Henry VIII. And once he's like, you know what, fuck it, I'm the king of Ireland. How about that? It starts this whole renewed interest in really what people call the conquest of Ireland, which is kind of like a misnomer because they've been conquering. The English have been there, fucking shit up. But for some reason, the Tudor conquest of Ireland is considered a very specific time period going on here.
And this is Elizabeth I takes the throne in 1558?
Yeah, but we're before that even. Still in 1541, the Kingdom of Ireland gets officially established by the Parliament of Ireland through the Crown of Ireland Act. And they declare King Henry of England, the King of Ireland, like we talked about. And this creates a separate new official political entity known as officially the Kingdom of Ireland. And this sought to allow the English more control over Ireland. Kind of sounds like they'd have more autonomy. Absolutely not. And they were going to unite the inhabitants of the Pale, remember that area outside of Dublin where all the English people were living, by creating a trained and armed community of subjects equipped and prepared to defend the lordship from the, quote, wild Irish at its borders. So what this makes me think of is, like, you ever see those, like, pictures or videos of, like, just Israeli moms strapped with AK-47s?
Yeah, I was thinking of Jamestown.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Right?
Yeah, we have lots of examples of this kind of shit where it's like, hey, average people out there, go out with a bunch of guns and just make sure that none of those Irish, those pesky Irish, get into Dublin.
No, I mean, like, when you mentioned the, like, Israeli mobs, like, obviously I feel like people have been hearing a lot about the football hooligans in Amsterdam lately.
Oh, yeah.
But one of the things that, like, the pictures of settlers in the West Bank always, like, I don't know what in my head, like, my, like, dumb imagination thinks settlers in the West Bank would be, but it's football hooligans.
Yeah.
Like, it's, like, terrifying, muscle-bound shitheads.
With guns.
Right.
So this is what England's basically doing out there, too. So the pressure of this falls upon the extension of English influence over the Gaelic Irish and what now we are calling the Old English. Remember how I said those English people who showed up really early, they start ideologically and in terms of, like, lifestyle and culture, identifying way more with the Irish than the English. So they get called the Old English. They are descendants of Anglo-Norman settlers who had acclimated to Irish culture and were like, we feel Irish. So we start to see this developing kind of bond between the actual Irish people, right?
So, with class divisions.
With class divisions, though, and the Old English who are like, hey, we've been kind of semi-peacefully living amongst you as one with you for a long time because, frankly, England did not have their shit together and this was all a clusterfuck. We'd rather be with you guys than England.
With class divisions.
With class divisions.
Right, like, especially...
There's a strong class thing going on here.
In several of the rebellions, it does seem like the Old English merchants tended to send, or, like, to sell weapons to both sides, which is very funny.
That's very, very America core, honestly. Very capitalism core. But this is kind of where those Old English, their alliances are starting to fall. And the Gaelic Irish are probably like, well, you have more power than us in the system of England, so it probably doesn't hurt to have you on our sides. So the interests of the Old English and the Irish merge because they're both in opposition to this new English government that's emerging throughout Ireland, right? And the English Reformation is underway this time. So in England, they're all in Reformation vibes, right? Renaissance humanism is like the thing. And they're like, oh, but like the most important thing we can be is educated. Educated men can present solutions to government.
Okay, this is a weird description of the Reformation.
Well, this is kind of what is relevant, the relevant talking point that like historians used to discuss how this was going to be relevant to Ireland.
Though it's also, right, you do get like a bunch of like Ulster Scot Presbyterians who are some of the first people settled, and like, I'm just going to say Presbyterians in the 16th century. Wackadoos.
Yeah. Oh, right. Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. So this is really like, we've been turning away from the Catholic Church, right? We got Protestantism is the thing. We got the English Reformation. We got this Renaissance-y idea that it's like, the mind of man can do things. And they're like, the things we got to do is a bunch of social and economic and religious reform all throughout England. But in Ireland, this doesn't really land the same way as it does in England. So Ireland is thought of instead as being just like too sick or too diseased for these reformations to take hold. So the way that all of these English thinkers at the time are approaching Ireland is they're like, Ireland is sick and it needs a cure. So social welfare becomes the cure in their minds. They're like, we're going to do education in Ireland. We're going to teach them how to be good subjects. So in 1547, Archbishop George Browne pushes to build a college in Dublin, which is just really a thinly veiled attempt to, quote unquote, civilize the unruly Irish who are just not happy with being colonized. But they're like, no, we'll teach them to be happy with being colonized. We'll make them as English as we can.
Yeah.
So this is really what's happening in Ireland during the Reformation of England. And the colonization of Ireland is therefore thought of as this collective act that serves the public good of the English and the Irish and of the people in England.
I mean, like a caveat here, which is like the English weren't happy about like the fucking like they were like, go to the New World, you crazy psychotic Reformation guys.
Yes.
Like, get the fuck out of here. So right, like the Reformation was happening at the same time as like the Age of Reason type shit.
Right.
So these are like two sort of separate things.
Right, but it is relevant because, like you mentioned, like Ireland was very, very Catholic.
Yeah.
So we're seeing like a lot of different forces going on, and England is not staying very Catholic.
And
so they are going Protestant too.
They're going Church of England Protestant,
yes.
And for Church of England becomes like a very weird, or like the Anglican Church thing becomes this very weird no man's zone within sort of like ideology, because it's like too Catholic for the
right, and too it is, and it's really just the king amassing more power.
Yeah.
The king being like, the church was a real threat to my power. What if I'm the church now? Boom, yeah. Church of England. So all this is happening at the same time. The Reformation, Renaissance, everything's kind of in this period of massive change, and they're like, why aren't the Irish on board with this? And the Irish are just like, what the fuck are you guys doing? Like, this is wild. And so they're like, okay, we gotta really, the way we're gonna do this as good enlightened people is we're going to teach the Irish how to be subjects of England.
We're gonna set up schools for them.
We're gonna set up schools to teach them. We're also, the Tudor government goes to work in Ireland during this whole Reformation thing. We're like, we're doing new systems, we're doing new things. And they're like, all right, cool, we're going to confiscate more of your land, and we're going to colonize it with more settlers from Britain. We're going to impose more English laws and enforce the English language. Guess what? Get rid of your Gaelic Irish language. You're all speaking English now. Also very common technique in colonization. Yeah. How about this? Catholicism banned.
Yeah.
Yeah, which the Irish are not stoked on.
This was
they're
like
Catholic.
a period where that was like kind of the case in England too. Like they were just get that Catholic shit out of here.
Right. Your monasteries dissolved because they're Catholic monasteries, and we don't do Catholicism anymore. And you've got a new state religion now. Guess what it is? English Protestantism.
The Church of England.
The Church of England.
Like they're not like Calvinists or some shit.
No. It's all what England's doing. And the people in Ireland are like, we don't fucking like this. We like being Catholic.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, you're not. And that's illegal now. So the English state then sets about sponsoring plantation developments under Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth during the Tudor reign, increasing emphasis on agriculture. We're going to send a bunch of English people there, and they're going to do agriculture on the land. And this encourages this new wave of English settlers colonizing Ireland. And Ireland at this time is considered a frontier. Much the same language that's used to describe Ireland at this time is the same language that was used to describe, like, the Americas when the British went there.
So one thing that to mention with like the beginning of Elizabeth's reign is that, as you said, the Gaelic language was banned in Ireland. Queen Elizabeth actually commissioned by Christopher Morgan one of the first Gaelic language primers, which is like really bizarre. And it seems like she did try to meet with like sort of like local Irish noble people at various points, including Grace O'Malley, then the so-called Pirate Queen of West Ireland.
Oh, cool.
Who was very cool. Well, however, Hiram Morgan writes this was very gesture politics. It never formed a part of a wider policy to respect Irish culture and heritage.
Right. And this is kind of the Queen Elizabeth thing.
Yeah.
She's like, I am giving you your freedom, kind of. Yes. And everybody's like, you're not really doing anything. What the fuck are you talking about?
It's kind of the Democratic Party.
Yeah, she's really is the Democratic Party of England. That's a great way to think about it. So, during this time, they're like, Ireland's a frontier. We got to send as many English people out there to settle the land as possible. And working the land is actually, fun fact, what makes you morally good. And if you don't take to this agrarian lifestyle, it's because you're lazy and therefore evil. And this author, Robert Payne, obviously famous author, published a propaganda piece attempting to attract people to Ireland. And he was like, the soil is fine and wealth can easily be gained if only you come do agriculture.
And then he said, go west.
Young man, go west.
to the island right over there.
So, Protestant religion at the time, the Church of England form of Protestantism, also emphasized this virtuous labor. So the church was backing the idea that, yeah, what you got to do is seize the land in Ireland, give it to the English, do agricultural settlements, and work it. Great. The church loves this too. So the English are like so obsessed with demarcating the land and dividing it up. And they're like, further proof that the Irish are wild savages that can't be trusted to do anything for themselves is why haven't they done this themselves already? Mm-hmm. If they're so civilized, which is exactly the same logic the British used in the Americas.
Yeah.
So, obviously, this is going on. The Irish are not just like, cool, let it happen. We see some strong rebellions. And one of the biggest rebellions that feels the most consequential happens from 1559 to 1567 under Shane O'Neill.
Yeah, so this is sometimes called the Tyrone's Rebellion. It's worth noting that, like, as you mentioned, like, there's this huge expansion of, like, colonial power under Thomas Radcliffe, Earl of Sussex, who was governor. Under his authority, England practiced a policy of martial law in the Irish Midlands. Chief among his goals was the suppression of rebellions led by Shane O'Neill of Ulster County, who led a rebellion against English expansion of colonial control with the help of Scotland and France. So Radcliffe made killing O'Neill his chief priority, writing, if Shane is overthrown, all is settled. If Shane settle, all is overthrown. It took till Radcliffe's successor, Sir Henry Sidney, for O'Neill to be assassinated with the help of a rival Irish family. Moreover, because of the expansion of colonial rule in Ireland, a whole new class of colonists, the Irish Pale, made up of English Protestants, as you mentioned. So O'Neill rebels against this, and under his leadership, a full-scale rebellion breaks out in 1593 in what came to be known as Tyrone's Rebellion. Under Radcliffe's successor, William Fitzwilliam, the structure of Ulster and Tyrone County was undermined. Clan chiefs of the MacMahon family were ousted or persuaded to become freeholders instead of relying on traditional family structures of land ownership and cultivation. An emerging idea of Irish state sovereignty began to gain currency within Ireland, and this was embodied in Hugh O'Neill, described by a 19th century biographer as the first for many a century to conceive and almost realize the grand thought of creating a new Irish nation. O'Neill had been born into a prominent family in Tyrone County, Ireland, in 1550. But after the assassination of his father, Shane, in 1558, it was relocated to the Irish Pale to be raised by an English family.
Well, actually, Shane killed his father. Shane wasn't his father.
Okay.
So actually the story of Shane O'Neill is like super interesting. Just backtrack a little and give some like lead up into it. So Shane O'Neill was an Irish chieftain, and there had been these clans kind of throughout Ireland, like you had mentioned, right? It's not like there was like a nation state as we think of it. They were just like little clans working their land. So the English had started granting English titles to these kind of lords of Irish land. So Shane O'Neill's father became the first Earl of Tyrone in Northern Ireland, which was the county there, Tyrone, and that's why this ends up later being called Tyrone's Rebellion. So Shane O'Neill hated the English. Like, there's this one story that was popular around the time as, you know, he kind of rose to prominence. His father had been the first Earl of Tyrone. His dad dies. Shane kind of carries on the family name. He's a person considered very important around this area of Tyrone. And he hates the English so much that this story circulates that he once hung one of his own followers because he caught him eating an English biscuit. This is how much this guy hates the English. He's grown up with his dad kind of being subjugated by them. His dad dies, and he's like, okay, yeah, now I'm the most prominent kind of dude in the family, the O'Neill family in Tyrone, in this area. And the British have been fucking with me my whole life. So, yeah, in 1561, he staged the first rebellion against the Queen, who, at the time, Elizabeth, the Democratic Party, if you will, of the Tudor leadership. And in 1562, basically, the Queen is like, hey, remember how you tried to do a rebellion against me? Get you and all your people, get your asses to London. We're going to have a sit down about this, because what the fuck was that? So he ends up, Shane O'Neill, coming to London with this whole party full of Irishmen. And at the time, English Tudor law had required the Irish to totally assimilate to English customs, like we talked about during, like, the Reformation. They're like, now you are reformed, you are English. But O'Neill's party came wearing totally traditional Gaelic clothes. They had long hair, they had long bangs covering their eyes, they had these shirts with huge sleeves that were dyed with saffron, they wore these shaggy cloaks, they wore these short tunics. Some of them were barefoot, others were in leather sandals. They did not look English. So they show up in total defiance of the law. But Shane O'Neill falls upon his knees begging the Queen for forgiveness for his rebellion. Not because he actually cares. He fucking hates the English. But he's like, I got a plan. Okay. I'm cooking up a plan. So he's like, oh my God, my Queen, you don't understand. It's so complicated. And my dad in the region, we know not what we do. But now I understand the error of my ways. I've been reformed by you, the English, and your great education system. Thank you. And I just want to serve England. TBH. And the Queen is like, ugh, killing you would be bad in Ireland. You're very popular there. Fine. Here's how you can prove your allegiance. Why don't you help me take this area of Northern Ireland that's full of Scottish military families that just settled there. Get them the fuck out of there.
250 Presbyterian Scots who settled in Ulster County, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Ulster County. We're going to talk a lot about Ulster County. It's an area of Ireland in the north. We're going to talk about it throughout this whole story. So she's like, prove your worth. Get rid of those Scottish people in Ulster County. So O'Neill goes back to Ireland, and now he goes back with, like, English money and soldiers behind him, and he's like, ha ha ha, you fools. I will drive out the Scottish, but I am then going to write to the King of France and ask him for 6,000 troops to help expel the English from the land. So he's like, I'm cooking up plans all over the place. So that is when, as you talked about, Sir Henry Sidney in 1566 becomes the new English Lord Deputy of Ireland. And he's like, we got to go hardcore on this fucking O'Neill guy. Because by this point, he has been running game on every English person he can. He's just out there doing whatever the fuck he wants. He's lying to everybody. He's manipulating everything. It is totally just like Shane O'Neill hours. And that's why Sir Henry Sidney is like, my life's work is killing this man. I will find a way to kill him. But it's easier said than done, because at this time, O'Neill basically is leading a small freedom-fighting army around Ireland, and he's surrounded by 600 armed men at all times. You can't even get to the guy. He's bringing 5,000 men into battle with him, and, you know, he's doing pretty well, but Sir Henry Sidney is like, we're bringing out the big guns. So the battles start getting more and more and more intense until eventually Shane O'Neill is outnumbered. And he is forced to seek shelter with the same Scotsmen that he had previously ejected from the north.
So that's not great.
It's not great. And it goes about as well as you can imagine fighting breaks out and the O'Neill party gets killed. And that's when O'Neill's head gets presented to Sir Henry Sidney. Mission accomplished, we did it. But the O'Neill name doesn't disappear that easily. Remember, it had been a whole clan in the North. So Hugh O'Neill, he's a guy whose father had been killed by Shane, but he was part of the same clan. And after this happened, he was sent away, yes, and raised in England as a royal ward for, like, protection. So 1 year after Shane's death, he returns to Ireland with English government backing. Because remember, the English government was like, well, what are we going to do in Northern Ireland? We killed everybody's favorite O'Neill, but we got this other O'Neill here in England. We'll just send him. He'll be the new O'Neill. So they're like, go out there and just take care of Northern Ireland on our behalf. You're like our inside man, right? You're like a puppet ruler of the Northern region on behalf of the British. So in the 1570s, Elizabeth tries to privately fund developing a plantation in the region up there, Ulster in the north, but it fails and sparks this huge local conflict. And she's like, it's going to be totally fine because we got Hugh O'Neill out there. He's going to have our back. But Hugh O'Neill, pretty instantly upon arriving back in the northern part of Ireland, gets elected by his clan to have the title of the O'Neill, which is like the same title Shane had. That's like a big deal title for the locals. So he becomes basically the new Shane. And he's like, this is way better than working with the British. Fuck the British. I get why everybody hates them. And is a total slap in the face to British law. So Hugh then dedicates his life to being a Gaelic chieftain who also hates the British.
The funny thing about it, though, right, like, in contemporaneous reports, it does seem like he was like a bit of a Machiavellian figure, because he was like, at various times, like, I'm so fucking Catholic, if you don't, like, join the Catholic Church and rebel with me, you will literally burn in hell.
Yes.
And then other times it's like, oh, look, it's not that big of a deal.
Well, you can tell he really flip-flops a lot because of, like, where his family's from, what happened with his dad, but also the English role of, like, the government there. So by the end of the 1500s, before we get into Tyrone's rebellion, like before it even starts, the situation we have going on in Ireland is that Ireland is being aggressively settled and colonized by the British with a really strong plan for maybe the first time in this whole debacle. And the Irish are fighting back pretty violently to defend their land and expel all outsiders. Scottish, British, they don't care. Get the fuck out of there and leave them alone. So that is what happens before what comes to be known as the 9 Years' War or Tyrone's Rebellion. And that was led by, like Hugh O'Neill? Was he actually actively involved in Tyrone's Rebellion?
Yeah, so he was actively involved in Tyrone's Rebellion. So after hanging the leader of the MacMahon family in 1591, war breaks out. The O'Donnell and Maguire clans begin to actively resist English colonial rule, leading to one of the weirdest named battles I've ever heard of, the Battle of the Ford of the Biscuits.
Oh!
In which a column of 650 English soldiers was ambushed by members of the O'Donnell and Maguire clans, and it seems like they were more or less picked off as they were just, like, walking through a valley and killed.
You know, that happens sometimes.
At this point, O'Neill, who's also leading a column of soldiers from Tyrone and feuding with both his estranged brother and with members of the Maguire clans, joins the rebellion. In 1598, he starts writing letters to other sort of, like, Irish Catholics who are, like, a little less aggro about things, including one letter to James Fitzpiers, urging him to join the rebellion. And he says, quote, "And forasmuch as it is lawful to die in the quarrel in defense of native soil, and that we Irishmen are exiled and made bond slaves and servitors to a strange and foreign prince, having neither joy nor felicity in anything, remaining still in captivity, to reform all things to the will of God and goodness of the commonwealth, we have thought it convenient to desire and admonish you to rebellion or rotten hell." So throughout the course of the war, O'Neill starts issuing a series of pamphlets and circulars, kind of in, like, he's kind of doing what his dad is doing, but he's, like, chief propagandist.
Right.
Right. And that's, like, sort of the thing. So he issues these pamphlets and circulars that put the cause for Irish independence in religious terms. So at the same time, by the way, England's at war with Spain.
Right.
And they're like, this is not... Spain's, like, super Catholic, and so Spain is, like, sending money to the Tyrone Rebellion.
Right, and we will see later that this is important because O'Neill gets kind of buddy-buddy with Spain.
Yeah. With the Flight of the Earls or
Which,
whatever. Yeah.
Which will come up after this.
And so like Pope Pius has excommunicated Elizabeth at this point, which she's already she's been out of the church, but Pope Pius is just like, oh, I'm gonna do my like.
Yeah. The church is really like, okay, fuck you too, England, and England's like, we already forgot you existed. So we got our own church.
So this, especially, I mean, it becomes bigger in the 17th and 18th century, and O'Neill becomes this sort of like emergent figure in Irish nationalism, right? Which is like, this is this guy that we can kind of look to and be like, he understood that Ireland was like a nation. Right. So by 15...
And again, nationalism, very popular amongst colonized people. You get either nationalism or communism, but we don't have communism yet, so it's all nationalism.
Sometimes both, and it gets weird.
Yeah, sometimes both, and it gets weird.
By 1599, most of Ireland was in open revolt against English rule, and the English had suffered several defeats. In that year, also, Robert Devereux, Earl of Sussex, arrived with 17,000 English soldiers and took up occupation of the south of the Irish Pale. His attempt to retake Ulster were initially disastrous, and he suffered defeats along the mountains of Sligo?
I don't know how to pronounce anything.
Yeah. And thousands of his soldiers died basically of like unsanitary conditions and like dysentery from like
not a great way to go. Yeah, it's not how you want to go.
O'Neill, meanwhile, sent peace terms to England demanding self-governance and freedom of movement, though under British sovereignty. So, right, he's doing the like, listen, guys.
He's like, that's fine. We get it. We're England. Blah, 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 blah. Can you just leave us the fuck alone a little?
Yeah. So, in a campaign started in 1600, George Carew began to successfully put down the rebellion, reporting that he'd killed over 1,200 rebels. Finally, through siege and attrition, after the disastrous for the Irish Battle of Kinsale, and after British forces had sparked a famine through the destruction of Irish crops and cattle, the rebellion collapsed. So they did the thing that colonizers do when they would like to put down a rebellion.
They're like, we'll just kill the whole land.
Scorched earth. We're doing the whole fucking thing.
Yeah.
O'Neill retreated to hide in the forest, and his inauguration stone was destroyed in Dublin. The war brought England, by the way, to the brink of bankruptcy. Most of the rebels were pardoned basically just in order to avoid further war. O'Neill, along with the other Irish earls who had led the rebellion, fled Ireland in 1604 in an attempt to gather resources. This is the Flight of Earls.
There's some debate over this, actually.
Okay.
So let's talk about this.
Mm-hmm.
So by 1600, 3 years before the 9 Years' War came to an end, the population of Ulster, that region of Northern Ireland we've been talking about, that, you know, the O'Neill clan was kind of from that area, their population had been greatly reduced. It was somewhere between 40,000 to 200,000 people at the absolute most. One population estimate was like there's between 20 to 40,000 adults, not counting children. Other people were like, there's 200,000 children. But it's been rough. So in 1603 is when we really start laying the groundwork at the end of the war for the plantation of Ulster. And this is going to be a complicated thing that we're going to talk about that goes into the Flight of the Earls and what happens. So on March 24th, 1603, Elizabeth dies. And she's got no natural heir. So this marks the end of the Tudor dynasty. So that means James VI of Scotland is set to succeed the throne of England as King James I from 1603 to 1625. And in doing so, he establishes this whole new dynasty called the Stuart dynasty. Ulster, meanwhile, it's the most Gaelic province in Ireland. There's not very many English people there. If you think about it, the South has more English people. They just aren't going that far north. It just takes more time. Think of it like the West, like the East Coast of the United States got settled first, and then the West came later. This is kind of what's going on with the northern area of Ireland. So Ulster, very, very Gaelic, very, very Irish, not a lot of English influence there. Almost fully rural, has very few towns or villages. The English viewed it as underdeveloped. Some of them also erroneously thought that the people living in Ulster were nomadic because sometimes they would have temporary homes that they built like up in the Highlands when they were doing like agriculture stuff there. But it's really not a very well understood region from the English perspective. The economy was mostly agriculture and cattle already up there. So, as early as 1603, right when the 9 Years' War comes to an end, a series of new laws start to get introduced that allow English and Scottish Protestants to go into the north and settle the lands of the Gaelic Catholics in the region. Because remember, they're holdouts. They're the least British, so that means they're also like, no, we're fucking Catholic. We know you guys have been doing your no Catholic Church thing. We're Protestants, blah, blah, blah. But up here, we are Catholic. So, 1603... they're like, go kick those Gaelic Catholics out of there and take over their land. So these British Protestants are regarding the Catholic Irish as, first of all, racially inferior, which you have to do. You have to dehumanize them to feel okay about kicking them out of their homes and stealing their land. And Britain is using techniques like religious suppression, apartheid-style division, and just like straight up well-organized violence to gain access to this Irish land and its products while expelling the local people from it. So by 1605, they have more formalized plans getting introduced to create a formal plantation there, which is what they're calling it. And this means taking Scottish settlers and planting them in Ulster, right? And the plantation scheme applies to 6 of Ulster's counties: Armagh, Cavan, Donegal, Fermanagh, Londonderry, and Tyrone, which was the site of the Tyrone Rebellion. So this would, according to Dr. Philip S. Robinson, prove to be one of the most politically significant mass migrations to have taken place in Western Europe since medieval times. So in 1606, a Scotsman, Sir James Hamilton and Sir Hugh Montgomery, encouraged Scottish people like, hey, come over to Ireland with us, come settle in this northern area. And this begins a process of 20 to 30,000 Scottish people in total crossing the North Channel into Ireland to take the land, basically, from the Irish and claim it as their own and settle it. And this happens, remember, again, because the new King of England is Scottish. So this is going on, and in 1607, that's when we really hit this period that people call the Flight of the Earls. And this is where Hugh O'Neill, as well as some other Gaelic lords in Ulster, which you talked about, some of the other families, they flee for Spain. And there is so much speculation about why exactly this happened. So definitely we know that they had mentioned some fear of persecution by the English government after the rebellions. They also had a close circle of family and associates that fled with them. Some historians argue that the Earls left in a hurry. Like, this was not planned. They were just like, oh shit, we're in danger, and they took off. And the evidence they cite for this is that, look, they'd been involved in a conspiracy to commit treason against the British crown. The Earl of Tyrone's young son, Con, was totally left behind. They were just like, we didn't have time to make sure that guy was on the ship. That kid, stuck in Ireland. The Earl of Tyrconnell, he left without his pregnant wife. His wife pregnant. He's like, no time for you, babe. You're walking slow. Bye. I'm out of here.
That seems...
Yeah, this is what they're doing. And also, there was a letter that had been anonymously left at the front door of an Irish council member house discussing this treason that had been laid out. So some historians are like, they got scared and they ran. Point blank. They were just like, get us out of here to safety. Other historians are like, they did not leave in a hurry. They actually had a planned tactical retreat because their goal was to go to Spain, meet with King Philip in person, and try to get him to give them more backing so they could return and continue fighting English. So I have read so many different historians fighting over this. Some of them are like, they were definitely gonna go back and fight the English. And others are like, they fucking covered their asses and split. They were not gonna come back. That is so naive to think.
I mean, realistically, there's no help from Spain right now.
No help from Spain happens,
right.
So this means the Earls never return.
Yeah.
And it is up to history to debate if this was on purpose or if this is just how the chips fell. So what we do know is that with all the Earls gone, all the people who had been kind of the ones that the Irish in the region were looking up to, who had been rallying around these rebellions, etc., this leaves large areas of land in Ulster basically unprotected, and it is easily seized by the crown and by these Scottish settlers. So in 1608, a commission is set up by the English government to survey all of this land they confiscated in Ulster. Sir John Davies, he ends up being the inspiration of the British government, and he proved by law that, look, the Irish don't even have a claim to this land. So it's actually really illegal because the land is kind of technically already ours. So we don't even have to worry about taking it because we don't have to take it because it's already ours. And England's all like, yeah, we like that interpretation of the law. That's the one we're just going to go with. It's already ours. So by 1609, a second commission is put together to then go make a survey of the counties where all this land is. And plans are announced for the commencement of a scheme for the widespread plantation of Ulster, which, again, the groundwork had already been laid. They had already been sending people out there, but it hasn't formally been established yet. So amongst those who agreed to participate in the scheme was the City of London, which agreed to undertake to plant and introduce new settlers in the county of Derry. So they're like, all right, we're just going to make London number 2 up there. We'll send a bunch of people from London there.
I gotta imagine, in the words of a certain asshole, they're not sending their best.
They're not sending their best. But this is how we end up with Londonderry.
Yeah.
So the place is Derry, and London's like, we'll take over Derry, and now guess what? It's Londonderry. So in 1610, the third commission is put together, and their job is to secure final arrangements for the plantation. So the government plan for the plantation, this is a quote I'm reading from some texts about this, and, as always, all of our sources are linked in the notes. If you just scroll down, you'll see all the sources. It's a lot of JSTOR on this one. So the government plan for the plantation in the 6 counties of Donegal, Tyrone, Armagh, Coleraine, Fermanagh, and Cavan basically is this. The lands are divided into 3 portions of 1,000, 1,500, and 2,000 acres. They're then offered to the English and Scottish planters on the condition that certain rules are observed. Market towns and free schools are then founded, and individual settlers have to build strong castles for themselves or brick houses with courtyards around them, and then they have to take an oath of supremacy and pay a fixed rent according to the size of their holding, that either 1,000, 1,500, or 2,000 acres. Servitors or military men for a higher rent might have Irish tenants upon their lands, basically sharecropping, right? Yeah. The other planters, supposed to be without that warlike experience, are forbidden to have them, but they are able to import a competent number of English and Scotch to reside upon their estates. So basically, if you're an asshole who knows how to kill Irish people, you're allowed to have Irish people working your land because we know you're going to suppress any rebellions that happens there with them. But if you have no track record of killing Irish people, you're only allowed to import English and Scottish people to be your sharecroppers.
I gotta point out that the estimation of the Scottish and Londoner type people who are going to themselves be essentially sharecroppers of one form or another, not great.
No.
Because they're like basically like, well, they're easy to kill. You don't even have to have an experience killing sharecroppers.
Right. So the English by this point, just like an average person in England, just like a regular old English person, the way they're thinking about Ireland is that it's a rich country where you go to make a fortune. Very similar to all the people being like, you got to go out west in the Americas to get gold and you'll be rich. So this is how they really do settler colonialism. They're like, if you go there, you'll be rich. So it makes it worth it in people's heads to go potentially die invading a new place.
And presumably it becomes, I mean, this is something that Marx talks about a lot, both with Ireland and with America. It's a safety valve for like social pressures within England.
Exactly.
You're poor as shit in England.
Go fucking earn your money in Ireland then. But settlers are like, I have heard that it is easy to get rich in Ireland. I have heard this, yes. However, I have also heard that the Irish really hate us and do a good job of killing us when we're there.
Mm-hmm.
And this rumor kind of spreads. People, it's not even rumor, it's true. So settlers are like, we're actually not as excited to go to Ireland. And this was actually surprising to the English crown. They were like, what do you mean you don't want to go there? But the word had gotten out that, like, the Irish are fighting back and they are not going quietly into the night, right? And they do not want us there. So they were all afraid, all of the English who were considering settling there. They're like, well, these Irish outlaws, quote unquote, are going to attack us and destroy our farms. So this Englishman in 1610 wrote about it and said, since my coming from Dublin within 6 days after my arrival here in London, I think I was asked several times what I thought of this plantation in the north of Ireland, right? The one they're setting up. and whether it were possible that these laborers and workmen that are now sent over for the building could save their throats from cutting, or their heads from being taken from their shoulders before the work was finished, or what assurance there could be that when this erection were fully protected, that the men did think of themselves to be most quietly settled, why might not the Irish do then as they had done before, in one night, to lay waste and consume all with fire and sword? So this guy comes from Dublin, and he's like, yeah, I'm in London. Everybody is just like, so all the people that we're sending over there, they're getting murdered by the Irish, right? Mm-hmm. This is what everybody in England is like, the Irish are killing us.
They gotta have, like, worse communication lines. Like, this is...
Oh, yeah, the info's getting back to
17th
England.
17th century social media is popping off.
right. So, they're like, we gotta find new ways to get more people out there, because they're getting really freaked out. So 1613, a meeting of the Irish Parliament approves the plantation of Ulster formally and is moved to provide representation in the future for the settlers who have arrived as a result of these recent plantations and people who are brave enough or stupid enough to go. And in 1619, they do a survey of their progress in this regard with the plantation of Ulster. And what they find is that even though only 500,000 acres of land were officially accounted for, somehow there were nearly 4 million acres that were actually part of the plantation across the 6 counties.
Wait, so the English are underestimating?
Well, they're just not keeping very good records.
But in a, like...
I feel like people are getting bribed is what's happening.
Oh, I see.
So the records are like, we've sold 500,000 acres. And they're like, that's weird, because I'm looking at 4 million acres. Mm-hmm. So where the fuck did all this come from? What's this deal? Who's this guy?
And presumably the Irish are going like...
The Irish are like, this is all our land. Why do you have any acres? These are our acres.
You can't even keep good records of what you stole?
Exactly. So, these settlers, remember, they had to build the castles and the fortified houses to protect themselves. Mm-hmm. So the castles and fortified houses across the plantation lands, across those 4 million acres, they're usually between 60 and 80 feet tall. They have 2 or 3 stories, and they are surrounded by barricades. And then people who are like smaller gentry or clergy, they live in these low thatched houses. But those castles and fortified houses, they have to be there because that's where people have to lock themselves in at night so the Irish don't fucking drag them out of their beds and murder them for taking their land. Which is fair.
Fair.
So in 1628, planters who have settled in Ulster are finally permitted, even if you're not a military man, to have native Irish as tenants on your land.
So everyone gets sharecropped. Like
everyone can be a landlord to the Irish
I'm
now.
assuming that by this point, it's like an incentive to go there. Like you can also have native... You
can have enslaved workers almost. Indentured servants.
Indentured servants.
Yeah.
Right. And B, it's sort of like, things are settled enough. There are enough garrisons built.
They're like, you're going to be fine. Don't worry. Just have some Irish people work your land for you. So the Irish themselves, meanwhile, some were given land. They were only given an eighth of their land. Mm-hmm. So this was all their land, and they got an eighth of it.
Okay.
So their original property was just taken from them without any compensation, and that is why the Irish people were then forced to submit themselves to a new class of English landlords and actually go work on these people's lands. Thousands were forced also overseas to go fight in wars on behalf of the English. They were fighting in the Swedish wars, and they're like, look, Irish, we took all your land. It doesn't belong to you. So your options are go fight in the Swedish wars, or go work on this English guy's land and be his tenant now.
Those are...
not great options for people who just showed up and stole all your shit. So they are still fighting back against their colonizers. And yeah, this is why the settlers do have to barricade themselves in their castles at night. And they also are not allowed to travel alone. Mm-hmm. Because the Irish are like, we're going to fucking kill you all. Get off our land.
And this, right, like... correct me if I'm wrong, but from other episodes, we know that, like, Irish secret societies start popping up all over the damn place that involve things like the Molly Maguires, which is, like, believe up in Ulster.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, you get weird societies that are, like, we'll go door to door, cross-dressing, pretending to be, like, an Irish woman who has been, like, kicked off of her land and is starving and needs food, and if you are a landlord, we might just murder you.
Well, yeah, exactly. This is what's going on. So despite all of the opposition, by 1641, this settlement that's called the Plantation of Ulster had really taken root. And a report gets sent of the Lords Justices and the Council of Ireland to talk about it. So, reading from this report, they say, the plantations here prudently begun by Elizabeth and piously proceeded in by His Majesty's most blessed Father, as by the blessing of God, they have prospered well, to the great advantage of the crown and benefit of the inhabitants planted. So they have been the very original in preservation of the peace and happiness which of late years this kingdom has enjoyed. That by them several English towns, castles, houses of strength, and churches have been built in many remote and desolate parts of this kingdom. More societies of Protestants settled than are in all the kingdoms besides religion, civility, schools, manufactures, and trades in a good measure for the time introduced. A clergy well enabled by the glebes, Glebes, I don't know what that word is. It's an old-timey word. Of His Majesty's bounty and otherwise, and the lands by habitation generally raised to values far above former times. The great Irish lords who for so many ages so grievously infested this kingdom are either taken away or so levelled with others in point of subjugation as all now submit to the rule of the law, and many of them live in good order. The country is now full of persons of quality, of British birth, and of civilly educated Irish. There was no way to reduce this kingdom to the English laws and obedience of the crown and to free England from the charge thereof, but only a full conquest or a political reformation by plantations, as is affirmed in a resolution taken in the reign of King Henry VIII by then Lord Deputy and Council, who all except the Deputy were born here, and of the ancient English descent, well affected, as they still are, who best understood the nature and quality of the country and the people. So basically, they're just like, hey, we're starting to really subjugate and control these Irish people.
Mm-hmm.
They're not acting up so much. We built all these schools. That's kind of working. Really getting a handle on how to fuck these people over. And it's been making us pretty rich. So shit's going well.
Yeah.
So this is basically the modern day interpretation of what this proclamation is.
And so at what point are we going to see, right, like the change in crops? Like in like what is actually being planted?
That's going to happen slowly over time while this is going on. So we kind of end this period leading up to the Irish Rebellion, which, David, you'll get into. But we end this period with the Irish being brutally subjugated to settler colonialism, having their land totally stripped from them, being forced to work for English landlords or go fight English wars because they have no other options. And in general, they are not happy about the arrangement, but the English are winning. And this is part of this long-running campaign that's lasted hundreds of years by this point, that's included ethnic cleansing, in which a third of the population of Ireland has already been killed through execution or starvation or banished into slavery in the Caribbean.
Jesus.
Yeah. So that gets us to 1641 and the Irish Rebellion.
In October of 1641, two guys, again in Ulster, Rory O'More and Conor Maguire, led 80 men from nearby Ulster and Leinster. We've heard that before, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that was the guy. The formerly deposed king of Leinster.
Yeah.
The one who was like, you know what, fuck it, I think I'm British now.
So they lead 80 men with like hidden weapons into Dublin, where there is a garrison manned by 2,000 British soldiers. Several of the conspirators capture nearby garrisons in the meantime, often through deceit of being like, we're looking for cattle thieves, and then they're there.
And then they're like, haha, surprise.
Surprise.
We kill you.
We kill you. We have your garrison.
Yeah.
So one of the conspirators, a man named Hugh MacMahon, was walking through Dublin ahead of the rebellion, and he happens to meet his brother, Owen O'Connell, who had converted to Presbyterianism, and they decide to go have a drink. And so MacMahon immediately starts saying, like, oh man, we got this fucking plot going. We're going to take over the fucking garrison in Dublin. This is going to rock so much. And his brother is like, nah, I'm telling. He's a fucking snitch.
He's a snitch. Wow.
So the gates of Dublin are immediately closed, and the garrison soldiers and leaders of the rebellion have to sneak out of Dublin. In spite of this, rebels overrun Ulster, and thousands of Protestants are killed or expelled, and it's brutal, right? Like, they're not just killing soldiers. They're, like, killing just people. Settler colonialists. It's, they're killing, you know... There is history of a deposition of 1641 in which there are reports of whole families being killed. It doesn't go well. In retaliation...
but again, worth noting, the families are there doing
settler
violence.
colonialists, right?
They are. It is violent.
Yeah, I mean,
I can't imagine why any of these fucking people are like, yeah, I'll bring my kids there.
yeah, I mean, it's not like. This happened in 1641. It's long buried stuff or whatever. But B, I don't think you actually have to have an opinion about the goodness or badness.
I have strong opinions about it, whether I have to or not.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just gonna say, right, it makes me feel a little weird to celebrate a child dying.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's about celebrating, though. Mm-hmm. I think it's, like, acknowledging that this is, like, being there is not like, oh, the poor, sweet, innocent settlers. And that's the same rhetoric that's used around Israel a lot. They're like, the poor, sweet, innocent settlers. And you're like, the people at a rave outside of a concentration camp are not poor, sweet, innocent settlers. Like, these are people here of their own volition to enact violence upon other people.
I'm not saying that.
David loves Israel. David's a Zionist is what we're learning.
I am suggesting that understanding that certain things are the inevitable consequence of settler colonialist projects.
Yes.
I
think that's the good point. It's inevitable. If you bring your kids to go to settler colonial violence, don't be surprised when your kids get killed. That was a fucked up move of you as a parent to put your child in that position. Just stay home.
It's right, like that's like the takeaway, and I can like just have like the like, well, that's what happens.
That's what happens.
It's not, wow. The we will dance again, people. I do.
That is fucking wild.
I do have zone of
interest.
Yeah,
it's zone of interest.
I like that does give me that feeling, and also something about having a tribal rave. Yeah. Anywhere makes me like not.
No, it's just all bad. Yeah,
predisposed in your favor because it gets. It's not my fucking
but
thing.
I think that's the point. It's like, this is the inevitability of settler colonialism. If your government is ever like, go take this land from these people, it'll be totally chill. It will not be totally chill, and there's a good chance they will kill you and your family because you're not supposed to fucking be there, and what you're doing is violent. And why did you show up with your kids?
So I will say it's worth noting that the depositions of 1641 and like the reports of families about what happened to them, they did not lead to the obvious lesson, don't colonize people.
Right. Yeah, I wouldn't think that England learned that lesson in the 1641,
It more or less underscored and extended narratives about Irish savagery and barbarity. Right. Like that becomes like the large narrative, and the Protestant colonialists do kill hundreds of Catholics in retaliation. Yeah. Right. So the rebellion is put down.
Right.
And like almost immediately, it doesn't go very far, which leads to the 11-year war in between then and Oliver Cromwell.
Yeah, then we hit the 11-year war, and there's like two ways to really think about this war. Like there's like two different eras of it. Like the first era from 1642 to 1649 is really interesting, and when we talk about it, we're going to focus on what kind of happens to be the only independent-ish administration of Ireland for hundreds of years pops up around this time. So by the time 1641 had rolled around, we really had to think about Ireland as being 4 different key groups operating with different goals and cultural markers and backgrounds. There's the Old Irish, which we talked about. Those are just the Irish people. There's the Old English, which was the early English people who showed up, and then they had kids with the Irish often, and they're like, we feel more Irish than English. They did have a different class position than the Old Irish because they had more class privileges. They were more likely to own land or whatever. But they were more allied with the Old Irish because a lot of them, like, literally were family members with them now through marriage and stuff and through kids. Then you have the New English, who have been showing up in the increased emphasis on colonization and settler colonialism. And then you have the Ulster Scots, the Scottish people, the 20 to 30,000 Scottish people who had been encouraged to go settle in Ulster in Northern Ireland. So these are kind of the 4, if you think of them as like factions at play here. And the 11 Years' War came about after the rebellion of Ulster in 1641. It's a full-blown war that gets totally out of control, and it's mostly between the Old Irish and Old English, like combined in their interests, versus the New English and the Ulster Scots. And it inadvertently triggered civil war in England, too, because the king and parliament there could not agree on who would command the army being raised to put down that rebellion. So basically, you just got war everywhere. You got civil war in England, the king versus parliament, their enemies. You got the war in Ireland. You got the Old Irish and the Old English versus the New English and the Ulster Scots. And by 1642, in March, the Royalists, which the people who supported the king in England, and the Parliamentarians, the people who supported the parliament in England, they formally declare war on each other. And the Scots end up siding with the English parliament. So this is just getting fucking messy. And in May, the Confederate Catholic Association of Ireland is formed. And they're like, this is a mess. We're administering our own land. So this is on the initiative of the Catholic clergy there, right? And Irish Catholics form what is in essence an Irish government at Kilkenny. Remember we talked about Kilkenny and I was like, we're going to talk about that again? Yeah, this is where the Confederate Catholic Association of Ireland comes about. And they have a Supreme Council that's elected by a General Assembly that's made up of landowners and people within the Catholic Church.
And I want to sort of maybe put like a little emphasis on landowners and members of the Catholic Church. Because
these are not just like average poor Irish workers. These are people who are like, we miss when we were in control in Ireland.
Yeah, and I think, right, like this is... when people in the 17th and 18th century begin to look back at, like, for example, the era of Shane O'Neill and start thinking of him as, like, a sort of proto-Irish nationalist, there is, like, a slight revanchist conservative tinge to it of, like, wouldn't it be nice if we went back to the olden days?
Yes.
Of, like...
Of how things used to be. And that also is why you see the Old Irish kind of allied with the Old English. I am sure that the Irish were like, this is just like an allegiance of convenience.
But it's also, it's like the prominent family. And
they are the prominent families and the Catholic
structures.
Church.
Yeah.
The Catholic Church is very, very popular there. So they all undertake an oath to uphold the Catholic religion and the fundamental laws of Ireland. So it's basically like, what's it called when the religion is the same as the government? God, why am I drawing a blank?
Theocracy.
It's a theocracy. Yeah, theocracy. So from 1643 to 1649, we have the Confederation of Kilkenny, as it's kind of called, and it's the Confederacy of Catholics that are ruling a large portion of Ireland at this time. They're actually in control in the middle of all the wars. And this is just in between the period between the uprising of 1641 and the advent of Cromwell, which is impending, which dun dun dun, that's foreshadowing. So members were called that Confederate Catholics of Ireland. They were Old English and Old Irish both, and it included descendants, yes, of Hugh O'Neill. So that's where that romanticism for the O'Neill thing comes in. And the Confederate government was controlled by the Supreme Councils, and their strategy was they're like, we're going to get in with the king. The King of England is now our ally. Because the Scottish are our enemies here, and they are allies with the parliamentarians, and the parliamentarians are at civil war with the king, so we're going to get in with the king. And so they go to negotiate with the king, and they're like, we will help you in your war against the parliament in England.
And this is, by the way, Charles I, right?
Charles I is the king. As long as you pardon our rebellion and let us be Catholic and let us kind of self-govern. So if you give us those things, we will help you fight the parliamentarians and the Scottish. So by September 15th of 1643, a truce gets signed between King Charles I of England and the Confederation of Kilkenny, right? These Catholic kind of Confederate leaders who are autonomously kind of operating the region during the war times. And negotiations happen in a series of different ways, some of which border on comedic. The communication, though, was relatively fast between the Confederation of Kilkenny and the king, but it's marred by general messenger type stuff, which is interesting. They'll be like, oh, this messenger went all the way there, and then it turns out the king was at his summer home. It's just weird, but it did move relatively quickly. And the king, as he got older, he started to have more health declines, and he just started to give more and more concessions. He's just like, yeah, whatever, let's just end this.
I gotta say, right, if you are in the middle of a civil war, right?
Yeah.
Probably don't go to your vacation house.
I think it was for safety.
Oh, okay. He's
Yeah.
like, I got to get the fuck out of London.
Yeah. So this is kind of the closest we get to a self-governing Ireland for a long time. And in 1646, the Supreme Council of the Confederates concluded with a treaty called the Ormond Peace with the English royalists, with the king, whereby in return for general amnesty and tacit toleration for Catholicism, you're going to let us do our Catholic thing, Irish troops would be shipped into England to fight for the king. And this was actually really controversial amongst the Confederates. There were some deep divisions going on here. Like the Supreme Council was dominated mostly by Old English Catholics and large landowners who just wanted to go back to the way things were and extract their power. But the other Confederates were more of the Gaelic Irish origin, and they're the ones who had lost the most of their land to these plantations. And they were like, these treaties don't actually represent our interests the best they could. Like just going back to the way things were before this war broke out, that doesn't help us because we were getting fucked over before this war broke out. So then we start to see internal conflict amongst the Supreme Council of the Confederates between the English Catholic, the Old English, and the Old Irish. So the Supreme Council members get threatened with excommunication. It's like this whole mess. So in 1648, the Confederates signs the Second Ormond Peace, which put their troops in Ireland under the king's command, and that's under the Earl of Ormond. That's why it's called the Ormond Peace. So the English Parliament, unlike the king, had always disavowed negotiations with the Irish Catholics. And in 1642, they had actually passed something called the Adventurers Act, where they promised to pay back the Parliament's creditors with land they were going to confiscate from the people rebelling in Ireland. So they've got this whole the enemy of my enemy is my friend type beat going on, and all of these alliances get totally renegotiated. And in 1649, we finally saw one key figure in one of these factions die and another one flee. And then what ends up happening is that militant Catholic faction in Ireland gets left without a leader, and it all kind of starts to fall apart. Now, at this point, we are 2 hours into this episode, and we are not yet to the potato famine or Oliver Cromwell.
Madeline, did I not warn you?
You warned me it was going to be a two-parter.
I was like, the second I saw it, I was like, look, I got a lot of it. It's a lot.
It's a lot. I think it does have to be a two-parter. Otherwise, it's going to be a really long episode.
I mean, it's going to be like 4 hours.
I know. So I guess this is where we'll leave off. And next week's episode will be about Oliver Cromwell, the English parliamentarian invasion of Ireland, and the actual potato famine and how it comes about from here, and kind of like the aftermath and what happens afterward.
And I gotta say, I was roasting you over text because you were like, when you were assigning portions, you were like, and you'll just do everything after 1960. And I was like, wait, Madeline, that's the Troubles.
We don't have to get into the Troubles will be its own episode, but I just want to talk about the legacy of settler colonialism in Ireland. And we're going to talk a lot about why you see Irish people in particular standing in so much solidarity with Palestinians and what it means to be like colonized people.
Yeah, no, I mean, like one thing as like a way to sort of predict where we'll go next week. Something on the order of 80% of people support Palestine. Or 80% of Irish people. It would be great if 80% of people supported.
I wonder what the actual figures are in that here in the U.S. But yeah, so we'll get into that next week, and then we will do our break from the main episodes. You can still join us over on Patreon. We've got our book club going on, and we've got some old episodes over there. Is there anything else you should add before we wrap up this, Uppy?
You know, we got through a whole episode, and you didn't say the word canceled once. Don't say it. All right,
that's it. That's the episode. Thanks so much for listening to another episode of Pick Me Up, I'm Scared. If you'd like to join us on Patreon, you can find us at patreon.com/pickmeupimscared. For $3, you can access 2 bonus episodes per month, including a backlog of bonus episodes of the past. If you don't have $3 or you don't want to give us your $3, that's totally fine. We respect it, and we are just happy you are here. As always, you can find all of our sources for this episode in our notes. Just scroll down and click the links.